Welcome back to Gene and Roger Talk Movies. Gene is out on vacay, short for vacation, and so I've asked Tykan to join me again. It's been 6 months since we've heard from Tykan. We did Godzilla -1, and we all loved that movie, by the way, which is currently on Netflix, so check it out if you haven't seen that one. But as usual, when Gene is out on vacay, we go down the road of movies Gene would never do. I'm not really clear if Gene would not do this movie, but we're doing it anyway. It's totally killer. It's playing on Amazon Prime right now. It is an Amazon exclusive or original or whatever the heck it's called.
I'm pretty sure it's an original.
Yeah, something like that. But it's got some time travel stuff going on, slasher movie stuff going on. Tykan, where are you at with this one?
I love time travel movies, especially when it goes back to the 80s.
Right.
I believe that if I could go back to any time period, I would probably go back to the 80s.
Well, were you actually alive during the 80s?
I wasn't. I was alive during the 90s. Okay. I missed it out. That's why I want to go to the 80s.
I mean, it is nice to see movies going back to the 80s, but I lived through the 80s.
Yeah, well, I was going to ask you about that, too.
Not certain if I would want to go back for any lengthy period of time.
We're going to go there for one summer vacation. Right. Like we'll be there for like 10 days and then say it's time to pack up the bag. It's like going to Brazil, right? You go to Brazil to vacation. You don't go to Brazil to live there, right? But I see Totally Killer a mix up of Scream meets Back to the Future with a photo booth of a time machine.
Right. So, yeah. It would make a good double feature with Hot Tub Time Machine. If you haven't
I actually
seen that.
did that too.
Yeah.
I did watch Hot Tub Time Machine too before watching Totally Killer.
Nice.
So it's actually a pretty good combination.
But the general premise is, and of course it's a horror comedy, the general premise here is that, 35 years ago, some maniac killed 3 girls, teen girls, on their 16th birthday by stabbing them 16 times. He was called the Sweet 16 Killer. He was never caught. And then in the present day, the mother of the main character, she gets attacked and killed supposedly by this Sweet 16 Killer.
Right.
And the girl, whose name I can't remember, Jamie.
It's Jamie.
Jamie, she has a friend who somehow is making a time machine for a science project.
I don't understand that either. Excuse me, I need to get the blue ribbon for the science project here, so I'm going to make a time machine out of a photo booth. But good Lord, I need more electricity than this town could even produce.
Right. And so, of course, one thing leads to another, and she ends up back in the 80s, the day before the first murder occurs. And now she's going to try to stop it in order to ultimately save her mother.
Right. While other hijinks and shenanigans happens.
Well, and I did really like, because, a lot of these time travel movies, they don't really get too much into how the main character who's traveled back in time is actually reacting to some of the things. So I really enjoyed some of the commentary on, because like the high school... in the present day, they're called like the Devils or the Red Devils or something, and their mascot's like this devil.
The Red Devil, and before it was an Indian.
Right, and then when she's back in time, it's like this caricature of a Native American who's the Red Devil, and she makes a comment about that, and there's a lot of things where she goes in because she wants to sign up for high school because she's got to get hooked up with these kids to try to save them. She just walks in and is like, yeah, I'm some foreign exchange student. I'm from Canada. Right. And she's just amazed that the school is just like, oh, fine. Yeah, go to this class. Go,
You don't want to see my ID?
Right. Yeah.
Just take your scheduled gym classes in 7th period.
Yeah. And so it's just really this neat little underlying stuff where, if you lived through the 80s or anything really prior to 9/11, it was pretty open as far as, we believe you are who you say you are and just go do this thing. Oh, you're looking for Bill? Yeah, he's right down there or whatever. And so that's kind of fun how they do that.
What about FERPA?
Right. And so, but Tykan, where were you at? Did you find it to be, because it's a horror comedy, but the kill sequences are unbelievably brutal.
They're good. They're really good. It's nice and crunchy, and I enjoy that.
Yeah.
I don't have anything really. I would say horror takes more of a backseat to the comedy or the modern commentary when it comes to, how modern day ideology would mesh between ideology of the past. That's where I see more of the comedy coming in with the routine, especially the stupidity of some of the kids in the 80s.
Well,
like,
right.
I've never lived in the 80s before, so I can only assume that maybe that there's some hint of truth about it with
I did not find anything out of the norm
You
from
did
when I was
not?
alive during the 80s. Let me
Oh
put
my
it that way.
gosh. So, I mean, I guess that means that we're not getting dumber, we're getting smarter. So, I mean, there's that.
Maybe more compassionate towards other
Maybe
people.
so.
Right.
You know, I feel like I went off of the tangent loop, but I do believe that the comedy does fill in more than the horror aspect, because I could say throughout the whole movie I wasn't afraid.
No.
And I was more looking forward to the kills. And I gotta say, with the kills that happened with the Sweet 16 stabbings, especially the first scene where he was hiding in the closet instead of being in the basement,
Right.
the 16 killer, I thought that was really good. And it's really clever too, what they did with the time paradox, where
Yes.
it's not going to be, it's you enter into the 80s, but it doesn't mean that's going to play out the same way. So she's dealing with this new variable where she thought she knew all the correct information, but the information is changing as she's interacting with the residents of the 80s.
Agreed. I really did like that. In the present day, there's this podcast guy who was alive during the time of the kills. He was a friend kind of with everyone involved. And so he's had this podcast going on where he's going to try to find the actual killer and all of this stuff. And I really liked how, yes, you're right. She goes back in time and she's like, yep, this is how it's going to play out. I know this girl gets killed in the basement and this happens and this happens. And of course, it gets changed because of her intervention. And then I like how in the present day, when it flashes forward, the guy who does the podcast is like, man, this is really weird. I could have swore my information was that she died in this basement, but now all of my crime scene photos show her having been killed in this bedroom. And it was, I really did like that as well. So it is, like Tykan said, a little smarter than you would maybe expect as far as how it handles
that kind of movie,
right?
yeah.
Because it is just this really light kind of film with surprisingly graphically violent kill scenes, which kind of offsets the lighter tone that's really throughout most of this film. And so just be prepared for that. But I also liked how quickly everyone just was like, oh, you're from the future? Yeah, let me help you.
Yeah, let me help you. It's okay. You know, and I would say that even the podcaster turned evil because she messed up the timeline.
Right.
Or maybe that's not true. No, I don't think he turned evil. I think he was always, the second killer to begin with, because he did go back to kill the mom.
Well, it's interesting because, the killing of the mom thing, we don't really know if it was him or not.
We do. He says that
Does he?
him.
Did he
Yeah.
say that? Okay, because I just assumed it was the person who is revealed to be the killer actually still alive.
Well,
and
maybe,
then goes and kills.
You know what? Now that I think of it, maybe it was the original killer, but because time was altered, and he knew who the killer. Are we doing? Okay, yeah. Spoilers are okay.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
Of course.
So
It's Gene and Roger talk movies.
yeah,
We're ruining the movie.
Exactly, we're gonna ruin the movie anyway. Since we know the principal dies at the very end in the past, and he doesn't come back in the future, the podcaster, knowing who the killer is, decided to take up his mantle and kill the mom. I would say, arguably, that the original timeline, it was the original killer. But in the new timeline, the podcaster becomes the second killer.
Right.
That's what I think happened.
But in the corrected timeline or the third timeline,
There's a third timeline?
well, he's actually
Yeah,
like
he's a
that
monk. Yeah, exactly. Because
that they're keeping an eye on just
his
in case.
future self, or the future self dies in the past.
Right.
Oh my God, there is 3 timelines now that I think about it.
Yeah, it's the beauty of time travel movies is don't dig too deeply into what they're doing because you're going to go down a rabbit hole.
So I have a question for you. As a podcaster, did you find yourself very inspired by this podcaster in the movie?
No.
Like, were you really inspired? Because I felt a lot of Roger vibes coming from the podcaster. Like, I could see you going out in Anchorage and saying, in this hall, this man killed this woman, in downtown.
No, I mean,
It was awkward.
The best we could do with something like that is I could go scouting locations for where Scott Eggleston filmed Bad Bones. That's about the extent of what I could do with something like that, because we're all about the horror movies, or in this case, the horror comedies. I really did like all the acting in this, even though
The acting was very good.
it's, again, this is a light little movie. If you've seen something like Hot Tub Time Machine, this is kind of in that vein of just nothing, no earth-shattering stuff's happening here, no major stuff's going on. It's just this light little film that you can watch. But the main girl, her name is, I think, Kieran Shipka, I think. She does a good job, as does all of because the characters in the present day, of course, are teenagers in this thing, and all of the youth cast does a great job. Having lived through the 80s, I'm like, yep, I remember these jock kind of guys acting exactly like that, and some of the creepy, weird guys and all this, because they do a lot of, ooh, is this the killer? Is that the killer? And then the person you would absolutely not expect, of course, to be the killer is the killer.
Yeah, it's the killer.
Which is standard slasher movie stuff, right? But it just flows along really nicely, and there's again nothing out of the realm of just, it's a fun little movie to watch on a rainy afternoon or whatever.
After you watch Hot Tub Time Machine.
Right. I mean, it does, Hot Tub Time Machine is not really a movie to talk about on this podcast because we're primarily horror and horror comedy. There's no horror going on.
There is horror in Hot Tub Time Machine, but just not where you expect
right,
it.
Yeah. But it's a nice little film, and like Tykan said, or the acting is good. The only thing that might catch somebody off guard who's not used to horror films is the brutality of the kills. There's a kill that occurs on a waterbed, of course, because it's the 80s. And boy, they don't pull any punches on what they're doing there, because he kills by stabbing them 16 times. And I think we saw them all.
Every single time. And I love it, too, is that when the future podcast goes back to the past, he still continues. I think he actually forgets for half a second to stab the victim 16 times. And he's like, does it once, and it's like, starts running after the others. And then he realizes, oh, wait, no, I'm supposed to stab her 16 times. Right. 1, 2.
Oh, I know. And they're just showing it. He's just going off on it. But yeah, so it's pretty amazing how they just really, here's some light comedy and everything's kind of light. And then, wow, here's a pretty brutal stabbing.
I especially like it where they're definitely parodying Halloween.
Mm-hmm.
Like the Halloween parodying is really, I said Scream, but I had to redact that. It's actually Halloween meets Back to the Future.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it, because his mask is very
Dan Schaefer,
very reminiscent of kind of the Michael Myers mask from Halloween.
My gosh, why did I? There was something about that mask that made me really laugh because it reminds me of someone, but I can't.
Max Headroom, maybe?
Is it Max Headroom? Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there because, of course, Max Headroom was a big deal in the 80s as well. So I also like how the main character who's gone back in time, she drops information about what's going to occur in the future, because she does like
psychic.
You're right, like she's a psychic. But I also like some of the throwaway stuff where she's trying to explain a situation to her friend in the 80s here, and she's mentioning the movie Scream, and then she's like, oh wait, no, that's not come out yet, and just like, oh, here's my phone, and it's her cell phone and all this stuff, where most time travel movies, you're doing everything you can to not let anyone know, and here's the technology and all this stuff.
Well, I guess the technology was already there if you think about it, because the 80s mom, I forget what her name is, she had all the tools to make a time machine, just as her daughter in the future had the same tools to make a time machine, except for the flux capacitor.
Right, but, exactly.
No, I thought that was really good. I also like the B plot of Jamie trying. Did I say? Is that her name?
Yeah, her name is Jamie.
Jamie trying to have a relationship with Pam, which is the mom
The
in the
mom,
past,
yeah.
and she realizes how much of a
Yeah, her mom in the
her mom's
past
not
was
very nice.
just not a
Muy
good person.
caliente,
Right.
as they would say.
Well, and I loved that too, how she keeps referring to her as mom. She's like, yeah.
Mamacita.
And then she has to like catch herself and say, yeah, right, mamacita, like she's some foreigner or something.
It's even better where she's trying to refrain from mom and dad to hook up way too early and ends up ultimately failing too.
Right. There's a good little ending sequence where what happens to all these characters. And one of the running stories there is her mom and her dad hooked up kind of on this thing called the Gravitron. It's like some amusement park ride where in the real world, when you use this ride, you pretty much are vomiting.
Yeah, you just vomit.
Because it's one of those ones that just spins you really fast. But so she's trying to do everything she can to not have her mom and her dad hook up at this point in time because they weren't supposed to until 4 years later.
Like,
but
oh my God,
and
like
then,
I'm supposed to be with them?
Right. And then at the end, the little ending sequence there where she discovers that, nope, they didn't hook up 4 years later. They hooked up right then and there. And so she actually now has an older brother whose name is Jamie.
And then they had to change her name.
Her name's like Colette or something now. So I did like that too, how she impacted the past, which has now kind of messed up her future a little bit, but not really. Nothing.
I really like how as far as time shenanigans goes, it's pretty good, the story, how it progresses within itself. Because usually when it comes to time travel stuff, it's exactly what you said before. If you look too much into it, you're going to find all the paradoxes within the film. But because it is such a light film in general, the paradoxes within the time traveling scenarios, it's really not that bad.
Right.
Like, it's pretty contained, which is something I'm relatively surprised about. So, to me, that's a plus, because I hate watching movies about someone using a flux capacitor to go back in time just to mess it up and have this completely ridiculous scenario play out that doesn't make sense because of all these paradoxes.
Right. I mean, the time travel movies, when they're more serious, you pay more attention to stuff like this. This is just a light little film where, okay, we get it. We're not going to dig too deeply into this. But there's movies, like Butterfly Effect and things like that, which really serious. And so you're really paying attention, even like Star Trek 4, stuff like that. But the time travel aspect works well here. It was just, again, a nice light movie with surprisingly graphic kill scenes, but that's okay.
I enjoy it.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a winner for sure.
So what was your favorite kill?
I really liked the waterbed kill just because, you can't get any more 80s than the waterbed. And, of course, he stabs her a bunch of times and, of course, is at some point just purposely stabbing the waterbed as well so the water can be flowing out of it and all this
It's
stuff.
a waterfall. Wow.
Yeah. But yeah, just because waterbeds, of course, were like in pretty much everybody's house back then.
I'm going a little bit off topic here, but what was with the waterbed phenomenon? Have you slept on a waterbed before? Is it comfortable sleeping on a waterbed?
Tykan, oh my gosh. Okay, so we're going to go off on a waterbed tangent right now. I have one in my house right now.
Oh my gosh.
So for basically my entire life, I slept on a waterbed. And then, full disclosure, my wife will hate me for saying this, but I'm going to anyway. So when I got married, my wife just finally was like, waterbed just has to go. And so then for like the next 15 years, I had some regular mattress, right? And I was like, why does my back hurt all the time, right? I'm old, so I'm like, oh, maybe it's just I'm old. And so just was hurting and hurting. And then it was like, hey, we've got this extra room in our house. Let's turn it into,
the waterbed room.
Right. And
of course.
So I was like, yeah, let's see if you can actually buy one of these things anymore. And shockingly, you still can. So I had it shipped up here, put it all together, filled it with water, slept in it one night. And it's like the next morning, wow, my back doesn't hurt anymore. And so I'm like, I don't know if it was because I had slept in a waterbed for so long that my back was just like, you can't sleep on anything but these now. But no back pain at all.
Is it just because
they envelop your whole body?
Yeah, they envelop your body.
Yeah, and so you have complete support. Every part of your body has complete support. And there's, I think one of the knocks waterbeds had, and sorry to suddenly turn this into a waterbed episode.
This is Gene and Roger talk waterbeds.
Talk waterbeds.
Okay.
There was multiple types of mattresses you could get, and what you needed to get was what's called a waveless mattress, because they have all these baffles in them and stuff. And so they're not so wavy. Earlier waterbeds were just like, yeah, here's this big piece of vinyl that you're going to fill up with water, and there's no real support, and it's sloshy and all this craziness. But the more modern or the more advanced they got, you had these waveless ones, and that's, of course, what I have in this waterbed in my house. And it's fine. It's like amazing. And I can't recommend them highly enough. The only negative for a waterbed, well, there's two. One, they can leak. I have cats, and so you have to be careful that they might puncture something. But two, good luck trying to move it, because you have to completely drain it and move it from there. So
just to verify for the viewers out there, this podcast isn't sponsored by Waterbed Incorporated today.
No. Well, and it was weird because on my quest to find if you could actually buy such a thing anymore, I went down the Amazon rabbit hole, and apparently there's some mom and pop operation that just builds these things, and then they'll ship them to you. And so that's how I got mine.
That is the most beautiful, inspiring story I've probably ever heard. I'm sure this podcast today, just for the waterbed segment, is going to get more views than you could possibly imagine.
I will have to put that in the title somehow.
Yeah, Gene and Roger talks waterbed.
But anyway, but I did like that kill on the waterbed, just because that's classic 80s, and then just that was the first real kill where it was like, wow, this movie doesn't mess around when it's going to kill somebody. And so, if you've got this light comedy and everything's kind of light, but then you'll have these brutal kill sequences. But highly recommend. Totally killer. Is it on the level of The Exorcist or something like that? No, it's just one of those fun little movies you can watch, have a good time, and maybe talk about time travel paradoxes or something.
And
waterbeds. But other than that, you can't really lose by watching this movie. What do you think, Tykan?
I would 100% agree. I would say that, if you guys watch the previous episodes when my wife was here, she hates horror movies, like hates it with a passion, but she enjoyed this one. So I say for non-horror fans, they will get a kick out of this one. And I would say for me, I thought it was a very fun movie, especially with someone a teenager from the 21st century going back to the 20th. I mean, I deal with teenagers all the time. The only thing I can say is that the lingo for the main character wasn't, up to date, because she should be saying to like 100% no cap, like I'm going to go scoop you up before you get killed. That's the only complaint. Like the lingua's not there, but what can I say? I'm guess I'm nitpicking right now.
Well, and of course everyone is smoking in this movie too.
Well, of course, that's actually something I wanted to mention. It's like when the one of the characters bring out like the marijuana stick she stole from the police station, and Jamie replies, "That's what you got? A few twigs?" Man, you would go insane if you know how much a gummy has as far as grams goes compared to your stick.
Yeah, she's getting that 80s marijuana that was just seeds and stems. But
overall, I think it's a great movie, especially for such a short one. It's a good time. Watch Hot Tub Time Machine, then Totally Killer. You're going to have a great time.
Yeah, definitely. I would agree with that double feature. Tykan, I would say, what are we doing next week? But you're not going to be here next week because Gene will be back.
We could put him on a waterbed, though.
Oh, right.
And then go find the Sweet 16 Killer. And then I could be in the podcast again.
Right, okay, yeah. Suddenly it's Gene's out and Tykan's in.
It wasn't because he was killing a hot
Game of Thrones thing going on here.
It's not the Red Wedding, it's the waterbed.
But Gene should be back next week, and we will do some other random thing that is undetermined at this time, but check out Totally Killer. And Tykan, thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me, as
and
always.
We will catch you next week. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.